Markets are now pricing in a 65% chance the Bank of Canada hikes rates in September, even though they just held at 2.25% this week. Welcome back to the Daily Brief Canadian Macro. I'm Steve. Today we're covering what happened at this week's Bank of Canada decision and why markets are betting on rate hikes ahead. We'll also look at February's real estate sales data and what's really driving those declines. Plus, we have insights on China's economic independence strategy. Market Mania, Mark Mitchell, Shaun, Rein, and others weigh in with their analyses. Let's start with the central bank. Today, Market Mania broke down this week's Bank of Canada decision and what markets are actually pricing in going forward. While the bank held rates at 2.25%, Market Mania points out that bond markets tell a different story. They're pricing in a 65% chance of a September hike to 2.5% and a 51% chance of a December hike to 2.75%. Bond yields have already moved, rising 15 to 32 basis points across 1 and 2 year terms as a response. What's interesting here is how bank officials responded to direct questions about future policy. Market Mania noted they gave what he called evasive non-answers when pressed on rate hikes and economic risks. The officials did admit that March CPI will show higher inflation, but according to Market Mania, they're using the same language they used before the aggressive rate hikes in 2021 and 2022. Core inflation has been near 3% for 10 of the past 12 months, only hitting 2.2 to 2.3% twice. That brings us to what's happening in real estate markets. Mark Mitchell took apart the explanations being offered for Canada's February real estate numbers. Canada's benchmark home price fell to $661,000 in February, down another $4,000 from the previous month, and down $33,000 year over year, with sales also down 8.1% from February 2023. Mitchell examined why Bloomberg attributed February's sales decline to a war with Iran that hadn't actually occurred yet, pointing out that cause must come before effect in time. The Canadian Real Estate Association's economist Shaun blames snow in Ontario, but Mitchell notes that Vancouver also saw sales drops despite different weather patterns. Mitchell used what he calls the ice cream and violent crime analogy. Both increase in summer due to temperature, but ice cream doesn't cause violence. He also points out that January 2022 had record Toronto sales despite heavy snowfall, which contradicts the weather explanation. Mitchell suggests that markets with the biggest pandemic price increases, such as Ontario and Vancouver, now show the worst sales declines. Meanwhile, there are broader economic shifts happening globally. Over on the David Lin Report, China expert Shaun laid out his case for why China has been building economic independence over the past decade. Rein argues that China's energy buildout makes it less vulnerable to Middle East disruptions than other countries. China added 380 gigahertz of solar technology in 2025, more than the rest of the world combined, and 280 gigahertz of wind power for the 15th straight year. Over 50% of new auto sales in China in 2025 were new energy vehicles, with BYD launching 10-minute charging technology. On the geopolitical side, Rein claims that European leaders, including Starmer, Macron, and German officials, have approached China like beggars in recent months seeking economic partnerships. He also points to China's technology independence, saying they've developed indigenous semiconductors through Huawei and other companies and no longer need to buy NVIDIA's H200 chips. Rein built his case around China achieving independence across energy, technology, and food security. But closer to home, Canada's efforts in achieving independence across energy, technology, and food security still remain without results. When you put today's analyses together, a clear theme emerges: policy confusion and institutional evasion at a time when Canada can least afford it. Market Mania suggests the Bank of Canada lacks clear direction, with officials giving evasive non-answers about future policy, even as bond markets price in rate hikes through the back half of the year. And here's the trap they may be walking into. There's an old saying that the cure for high oil prices is high oil prices. Energy costs eventually slow the economy on their own, and layering rate hikes on top of that, and you risk accelerating economic cracks that are already forming in an economy that shows real signs of stress. Mark Mitchell makes a similar point about institutional accountability in real estate. Instead of confronting the affordability crisis head-on, particularly in the markets that saw the most extreme pandemic-era price increases, associations and media outlets are reaching for weather events and geopolitical flare-ups as convenient cover for what are really structural problems. Zooming out, Shaun Rein's analysis on China offers an uncomfortable contrast. While Canada's institutions appear reactive and opaque, China spent a decade deliberately building resilience across energy, technology, and food security. Whether you agree with Rein's framing or not, the strategic question it raises for Canada is worth sitting with. The through line across all three segments today: when institutions lack transparency, markets and citizens are left to read between the lines, and right now, what they're reading isn't reassuring. Well, that's today's brief on Canadian macro. All credit goes out to the creators featured today. Their original videos are linked in the description below, and I highly recommend checking them out for the full analysis. If you found this helpful, please subscribe, hit the notification bell so you don't miss tomorrow's brief, and don't be afraid to comment if there's another creator you think deserves a highlight here. I'm Steve, as always. Nothing here is financial advice. Everyone's situation is different, so please do your own research and talk to a qualified advisor before making any decisions. Good night.